She accepted the invitation of a millionaire 28 years her senior, and was never the same again. That night wasn't just about passion. It was a game of mind, soul, and control. Now she carries secrets that could destroy lives, including her own. If you enjoy stories of love and romance, watch until the end, and you won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling us where you're listening to this beautiful story from. Let's continue. Helen Montgomery was 19 years old, but her brown eyes carried a weariness that did not belong to her age. It was as if they held ancient secrets, untold stories that weighed on her fragile shoulders. She studied art history at New York University on a scholarship she had won after much effort, spending entire nights hunched over books borrowed from the library. She grew up on the outskirts of the Bronx, raised by Christina, an emotionally distant mother who had once been a model and dreamed of international runways. Now at 42, Christina worked as a saleswoman in a clothing store in Midtown Manhattan and avoided talking about the past like someone fleeing ghosts. Whenever Helen asked about her father, the answer was the same. He died in an accident when you were little. You don't need to know anything else. But Helen knew there was more. She knew it from the glances her mother cast at her own hands whenever the subject came up. She knew it from the way Christina kept a shoebox on the top shelf of the wardrobe, filled with photographs Helen was never allowed to see. And she knew it especially from the heavy silence that hung over the house whenever she insisted on knowing the truth. Helen's life changed completely one March afternoon, when her contemporary art professor asked her to stay and talk after class. "Helen, an opportunity has come up that might interest you," said Marina Oliver, adjusting her glasses on her nose. "The Delacroix Foundation is offering paid internships for art students. It's a private, very prestigious organization that preserves American and international art. It's located in a historic townhouse on the Upper East Side." Helen frowned. "I've never heard of it." "That's normal. They're very discreet, working mainly with private collections and the restoration of rare works. The owner is Raphael Delacroix, a businessman who inherited a family fortune and invests heavily in art." Marina paused. "He specifically requested the resumes of the top scholarship students in the program." Helen's heart raced. An opportunity like that could completely change her trajectory. But there was something strange in the way her professor spoke, as if she were hiding something. "Professor, can I ask something? Why specifically scholarship students?" Marina hesitated before answering. "Raphael Delacroix. He has his peculiarities. They say he likes people who have fought for their lives, who know hardship, perhaps because he himself has a complicated history." 3 days later, Helen stood in front of an imposing townhouse on East 79th Street. The building looked like it was from an old movie, with its stone walls and enormous windows protected by wrought iron grills. A discreet plaque next to the gate simply read, "The Delacroix Foundation, Art and Culture." She was greeted by an elegant woman of about 50, dressed in black from head to toe. "You must be Helen. I'm Marcia, Mr. Delacroix's assistant. He's waiting for you." The interior of the townhouse was even more impressive than the facade. Old paintings decorated the walls, sculptures occupied the corners, and the smell of aged wood mixed with the scent of roses hung in the air. Helen followed Marcia down a long corridor until they reached a large room with shelves full of books and a mahogany desk that dominated the space. Sitting behind the desk was a man who took her breath away. Raphael Delacroix was 45, with dark hair showing a few silver strands at the temples and green eyes that seemed to see right through people. He wore a white dress shirt without a tie, its sleeves slightly rolled up, revealing strong tanned arms. There was something unsettling in the way he looked her over from head to toe, as if he already knew her. "Helen Montgomery," he said, rising slowly. His voice was deep, with an accent she couldn't place. "Finally," she frowned. "What do you mean, finally?" Raphael smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sorry. It was just an expression. Please, have a seat." During the interview, he asked strange questions. He wanted to know about her childhood, about the dreams that haunted her at night, about what motivated her to study art. Helen answered with sincerity, feeling inexplicably at ease in the presence of this man who should have intimidated her. "Have you ever wondered why some people are drawn to art?" Raphael asked, leaning forward in his chair. "I think it's a way to find beauty in a world that sometimes seems very cruel," she answered without thinking. "Interesting." He jotted something down on a piece of paper. "And do you believe that art can reveal truths that words cannot?" Helen felt a chill. "Yes. Sometimes a painting tells an entire story without saying a word." "Exactly." Raphael closed the folder in front of him. "You're hired, Helen. You can start on Monday." She left the foundation with her head spinning. She had gotten the internship, but something about Raphael's behavior bothered her. The way he spoke, as if he were testing her reactions. And especially that "finally" comment, as if he had been waiting for her for a long time. On her first day of work, Helen met the other interns. There were 5 in total. Herself, 2 guys from Columbia, a girl from the Pratt Institute, and Michael Sands, a 26-year-old restorer who worked part-time while finishing his master's degree. Michael was everything Raphael was not: simple, direct, with an easy smile and clear eyes that conveyed honesty. The son of a factory worker and a primary school teacher, he understood the difficulties Helen faced. "Are you on a scholarship too?" he asked during the coffee break. "Yes. And you?" "A federal grant. My dad always said that education is the only thing no one can take from you." Michael smiled. "Want me to show you the restoration studio?" Helen agreed, and they spent the afternoon talking about art, about dreams, about the expectations they carried on their shoulders. Michael was kind, funny, and made her feel normal for the first time in a long time. But when Raphael appeared in the studio at the end of the day, the atmosphere changed completely. "How was your first day?" he asked, addressing only Helen. "Very good, Mr. Delacroix." "Raphael," he corrected. "We're less formal here." Michael cleared his throat. "I was showing Helen how the canvas cleaning process works." Raphael looked at the young man with an expression Helen couldn't decipher. "That's good, Michael. You've always been very helpful." There was venom in those words, and Helen noticed the tension that settled between the 2 men. Michael lowered his eyes, embarrassed, and Raphael smiled in an almost predatory way. "Helen, I need you to stay a little later today. I have some documents to show you." It wasn't a request. It was an order disguised as kindness. After Michael and the other interns had left, Raphael led her to his private office on the 2nd floor of the townhouse. The room was smaller than the one downstairs, but much more intimate, with leather armchairs, an unlit fireplace, and paintings that looked like they were worth a fortune. "Do you want to know why I hired you?" he asked, pouring 2 glasses of red wine. Helen accepted the glass but didn't drink. "I imagine it was because of my resume." "Your resume is good, but not exceptional." Raphael moved closer to her, stopping at a distance that made her feel his masculine scent mixed with the woody aroma of the room. "I hired you because you remind me of someone." "Who?" "Someone very important to me." He lightly touched her face with the back of his hand. "Someone I lost a long time ago." Helen felt as if the floor were moving beneath her feet. There was something familiar in that touch, in that voice, but she couldn't place what it was. "Mr. Delacroix, Raphael, I think I should go." "Of course." He stepped back immediately. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. It's just that sometimes the past comes back in unexpected ways." That night, Helen could barely sleep. She dreamed of a man with green eyes watching her from a distance, and she woke up with the strange feeling that it wasn't the first time she had seen him in a dream. The next morning, she found an envelope under the door of her apartment. Inside was a piece of expensive paper with elegant handwriting. "Helen, do you wonder about your past? About the stories your mother never told? If you want answers, meet me tonight at 7 o'clock in the 2nd floor gallery. Come alone. There are things you need to know about who you really are. R." Helen read the letter 3 times, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend she hadn't received anything, but her curiosity was stronger. The need to understand why her life had always felt incomplete, full of gaps that no one was willing to fill. At 7 o'clock sharp, she was in the second-floor gallery of the foundation. The room was bathed in a golden twilight, lit only by a few lamps strategically positioned to highlight the paintings. Raphael was waiting for her with his back to her, looking at a portrait that sent a shiver of dread down her spine. It was a young woman with dark hair and brown eyes, wearing a simple white dress. The resemblance to Helen was disturbing, not just a vague similarity but an almost perfect likeness, as if she herself had posed for the painting. "Do you know this woman?" Raphael asked without turning around. Helen approached slowly, mesmerized by the image. "No, or maybe... I don't know. Her name was Christina Montgomery." Raphael finally turned to face her. "Your mother?" "Impossible." Helen shook her head. "My mother never mentioned posing for a painting. And besides, her last name isn't Montgomery, it's Christina Smith." "Ah, my dear Helen." Raphael's voice was heavy with an old sadness. "There's so much you don't know about your own history." He moved closer to her, and Helen noticed his hands were trembling slightly. "I met your mother when she was 22. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and also the bravest. She worked as a model but dreamed of being an artist. I was young, rich, and believed money could buy anything." He paused. "Including love." Helen felt as if the world were spinning in slow motion around her. You knew my mother?" "More than that. I loved her. And for a brief time, I believed she loved me too." "That's a lie." Helen's voice came out louder than she intended. "My mother was married to my father, Paul Montgomery. He died when I was little." Raphael smiled bitterly. "Paul Montgomery did exist, yes. He was a good man, worked as a carpenter, and loved your mother in a simple, honest way. But Helen..." He touched her face again. "Paul was not your biological father." Helen's world collapsed in that moment. She backed away from Raphael as if he were a physical threat. "You're lying. Why? What do you want from me?" "I want," he said, approaching again, "for you to understand why your life has always felt incomplete, why your mother lives haunted by ghosts you don't know, why you feel drawn to things you shouldn't know." Helen was trembling. "Even if that were true, even if you knew my mother, that doesn't explain why I'm here, why you hired me. Isn't it obvious?" Raphael stopped just inches from her. "You are the second chance I never thought I'd have. You are the opportunity to right the wrongs I committed 20 years ago." "What wrongs?" But Raphael didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a second envelope. "Read this when you're ready to know the truth, but Helen, before you open it, think carefully. Some truths once known cannot be forgotten, and some wounds once opened never heal." Helen took the envelope with trembling hands. "And if I decide not to read it? If I decide to walk out of here and never come back?" Raphael watched her for a long moment before answering. "Then you will spend the rest of your life wondering what you lost. And he sighed, "I will continue to carry the weight of all the secrets alone." That night, Helen left the foundation completely distraught. The envelope burned in her hands as if it contained fire, and she spent hours wandering the streets of New York without direction, trying to process everything she had heard. Was Raphael telling the truth? Had her entire life been built on lies? And more importantly, did she have the courage to find out who she really was, even if it meant losing the little stability she had achieved? When she finally got home, her mother was waiting in the living room, pale and visibly agitated. "Where have you been?" Christina asked, but her voice carried more than just concern. There was fear there. "At work, Mum." "Helen..." Christina stood up slowly. "I need to tell you something." And in that moment, looking at the face of the woman who had raised her, Helen knew that Raphael hadn't been lying. She knew it from her mother's eyes, which finally seemed ready to reveal the secrets they had kept for a lifetime. "About what, Mom?" Christina looked at the envelope in Helen's hands and her face turned even whiter. "About Raphael Delacroix, and about why I never wanted you to know the truth about your father." Christina sank onto the sofa as if her legs could no longer support her. Helen remained standing, clutching the envelope to her chest, waiting for her mother to break a 20-year silence. Raphael Delacroix, Christina repeated the name like a painful prayer. I hoped this day would never come. Mom, please explain what's happening. Christina covered her face with her hands. When she removed them, her eyes were red with tears that had not yet fallen. I was 22 when I met Raphael. I had just moved to New York, from a small town in upstate New York, and I dreamed of being a model. I was naive. I believed that beauty was a passport to anywhere. Helen sat in the armchair opposite her mother, realizing she was finally about to hear the truth. Raphael was different from all the men I knew. Rich, sophisticated, with that way of looking at you that made you feel like the only person in the world. He frequented fashion shows, sponsored art events, and when he invited me to pose for some paintings, I thought my life had changed forever. Did you date? Christina let out a bitter laugh. We dated, yes. For almost 2 years. I lived in an apartment he paid for, wore clothes he bought, met people only he could introduce me to. It was like living in a fairy tale. What happened? Paul. Christina's voice softened at the mention of the name. I met Paul in a very strange situation. Raphael had sent me to pick up a piece of antique furniture he had bought from a carpentry shop in Queens. Paul was the owner of the shop. Helen pictured the scene, her young, sophisticated mother walking into the simple workshop of a hard-working carpenter. Paul was everything Raphael was not. Simple, honest, with hands calloused from honest work. When he looked at me, he didn't see a beautiful object to be displayed. He saw a person. And you fell in love with him. I fell in love with the possibility of being myself. With Raphael, I always felt like I was playing a role, being the woman he wanted me to be. With Paul, I could just be Christina. Christina got up and went to the kitchen, returning with a glass of water. Helen noticed her hands were shaking. When I told Raphael I was in love with another man, he didn't take it well. He said I was his, that he had invested too much in me to just let me go. A shiver ran down Helen's spine. What did he do? First, he tried to convince me with expensive gifts, trips, promises of marriage. When that didn't work, he started threatening me. He said he would destroy Paul's life, that he would shut down the carpentry shop, that he would make sure no one in New York ever hired him again. My God. I ran away, Helen. In the middle of the night, I took only the essentials and went to Paul's house. I told him everything, expecting him to send me away, but Paul said he loved me, and that he would face any consequence to be with me. Christina started to cry, and Helen got up to hug her. We got married 3 months later, in a simple ceremony, with just Paul's family. I was pregnant with you. Helen pulled away from her mother. Pregnant? With whose baby? The silence that followed lasted an eternity. I don't know, Helen. When I found out I was pregnant, I had only been with Paul for 2 weeks, but I had been with Raphael up until 15 days before that. Helen felt as if the floor had disappeared from under her feet. You never did a DNA test. Paul didn't want to. He said it didn't matter who your biological father was, that he loved me and would love you too. And Raphael... Christina hesitated. Raphael disappeared from our lives as soon as he found out I was pregnant. He moved out of the country and never tried to contact us again. Until now. Until now. Helen looked at the envelope in her hands. Mom, what happened to Paul? What was the real accident? Christina closed her eyes as if the question were a physical blow. Paul died in a fire at the carpentry shop. The police said it was an electrical fault, but... She swallowed hard. But I always suspected Raphael had something to do with it. Paul had been receiving anonymous threats. Clients were cancelling orders for no reason. Suppliers were refusing to sell him materials. Why didn't you ever tell me this before? Because I was afraid. Afraid Raphael would come back. Afraid he would find out where we were. That's why I changed our last name from Montgomery to Smith, why we always moved, why I never let you make very close friends. Helen sat down heavily on the sofa. Her whole life made sense now. Her mother's constant anxiety, the reluctance to talk about the past, the feeling that they were always running from something. And now he's back, she murmured. Now he's back, Christina confirmed. And he chose you. That night, Helen couldn't sleep. She stared at the envelope, not daring to open it, imagining what terrible truths it might contain. When the sun rose, she made a decision. She would go to work as usual, but she would talk to Michael about what was happening. She needed the opinion of someone she could trust. Michael was waiting for her at the foundation's door with a coffee and a pastry. "You look terrible," he said with a worried smile. "Thanks. How kind of you," Helen tried to joke, but her voice came out weak. "Seriously, Helen, did something happen?" She looked around, checking to see if Raphael was nearby. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Michael led her to a corner of the garden at the back of the townhouse, where no one could overhear them. Helen told him everything, about the conversation with Raphael the night before, about her mother's revelations, about the envelope she still didn't have the courage to open. "Helen, you need to get out of here," Michael said immediately. "This man is dangerous." "But what if he really is my father? What if this is the only chance I have to know the truth about my history? And what if he's a psychopath obsessed with your mother, who has now transferred that obsession to you?" Michael took her hands. "Helen, think about it. What kind of normal man investigates an intern's life before hiring her? What kind of person knows intimate details about your family's past?" Helen knew Michael was right, but there was something stronger than logic pulling her toward Raphael, a need for answers she had carried for years. "Michael, just a few more days. Let me find out what he wants, what his plan is. I'm not going to let you face this alone. It's not your responsibility to protect me." Michael touched her face gently. "Maybe it's not my responsibility, but it's my choice. Helen, He hesitated, as if the words were too difficult to say. "I'm in love with you." Helen's heart sped up, but not in the way it should have. Michael's confession was sweet, honest, representing everything she should want in a normal life. But her life wasn't normal, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't reciprocate his feelings. "Michael, You don't have to say anything right now," he interrupted. "I just want you to know that whatever happens with this whole story, you can count on me." That afternoon, Helen locked herself in a bathroom at the foundation and finally opened Raphael's envelope. Inside were three things: a photograph, a letter, and an address. The photograph showed a young man with dark hair and kind eyes, holding a woman Helen immediately recognized as her mother. But it wasn't Raphael in the photo. It was Paul, her adoptive father, in a moment of happiness she had never witnessed. The letter was written in the same elegant hand as the previous note. "Helen, this photo was taken 3 days before Paul's death. Look at his face. Look at your mother's face. Did they know something bad was about to happen? The address I've included is for a storage unit in an industrial area where I keep some of Paul's belongings that I managed to recover after the fire. If you want to know the truth about his death, go there tomorrow at 8 in the evening. Come alone. And Helen, everything you discover from now on will change your life forever. Are you sure you want to continue? R." Helen looked at the photograph again. Paul did look worried, but her mother was radiant, with one hand on her still small belly. It was a photo of a happy family about to be destroyed. When she left the bathroom, she found Raphael waiting in the hallway. He saw immediately that she had read the letter. "Well," he asked, "why are you doing this?" "Because," Raphael moved closer to her, "some truths are too big to be carried alone." "And you, carrying these truths alone for 20 years? Raphael smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I've carried much more than truths, Helen. I've carried guilt, remorse, and a love I could never get over. Love for my mother. Love for your mother. And now," he lightly touched her arm, "and now, perhaps, a second chance to do things right." Helen pulled away. "I'm not my mother, Raphael." "No, you're not. You're much stronger than she was, much braver. Your mother ran when things got difficult. You're here, facing everything. Maybe I should have run too. But you didn't. And do you know why?" Raphael moved closer again, and this time Helen didn't back away. "Because deep down you know you belong in this world. In my world. What world is that? A world where truths are painful, where love is complicated, where it's not always possible to separate right from wrong. He touched her chin, forcing her to look at him. A world where people like us aren't content with the simplified version of life. Helen felt a shiver run through her body. There was something hypnotic in Raphael's voice, in the way he spoke of destiny and belonging. "I'll go to the storage unit tomorrow," she said. "I know you will. And after that? After that, you'll decide if you want to keep discovering who you really are, or if you'd rather go back to the safe life you've built so far." That night, Helen dreamed of a fire. She dreamed of a man screaming her name as the flames consumed everything around him. She woke up sweating and with the strange feeling that it wasn't just a dream, but a memory of something she had witnessed when she was very young. The next day, Michael noticed she was even more shaken. "Helen, you need to stop this. Whatever this man is planning, it's not good." "Michael, what if this is my last chance to know the truth about my father? And what if it's a trap?" Helen knew Michael was right, but she also knew she couldn't live in peace without answers. That evening, she took a subway to Hunts Point in the Bronx, her heart beating faster with every mile. The storage facility was in an isolated area, surrounded by abandoned warehouses and poorly lit streets. Raphael was waiting for her at the door, dressed in black, looking more mysterious than ever. "I thought you might not come," he said. "I thought about it too." He opened the door to the unit and switched on a fluorescent light, revealing a large space filled with boxes and furniture covered in sheets. At the back, there was a table with several objects carefully arranged on it. "These are Paul's things," Raphael explained, leading her over. "I managed to save them before the police and firefighters finished searching the wreckage." Helen approached the table. There were woodworking tools, some furniture sketches, family photographs, and in the center of it all, a diary bound in brown leather. "You can pick it up," Raphael said. Helen opened the diary carefully. The pages were yellowed, but the handwriting was clear. She began to read the last entries from just days before Paul's death. March 15th. Christina is more nervous than usual. "We got another strange phone call today. Just silence on the other end, but you can feel someone is listening. I'm going to install a new lock on the front door." March 18th. 3 clients cancelled orders this week, all with vague excuses. "John, who's been supplying my wood for 5 years, said he can't sell to me anymore. Didn't explain why." March 20th. Christina told me about Raphael Delacroix, about their past. "Now I understand the phone calls, the cancellations. He's back. I have to protect my family." Helen stopped reading, feeling nauseous. "Raphael, keep reading," he said calmly. March 22nd. "I met with Raphael today. We talked for 2 hours. He made me an offer. Enough money to start over in another city, far from New York, in exchange for Christina and the child. I said no, of course, but I saw something in his eyes that scared me." March 23rd. Christina is scared. I am too. Maybe we should take Raphael's offer, not for the money, but for our safety. Some battles aren't worth fighting. The handwriting grew more frantic in the last entries. March 25th. Helen woke up crying again. I think she senses the tension. Raphael drove past the workshop 3 times today. Didn't stop, just drove by slowly, watching. It's a warning. March 26th. Last entry. It's going to be hard to leave New York, but it's the only way to protect the ones I love. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to Raphael and accept the money. We'll be gone by the end of the week. Helen snapped the diary shut. He was going to accept. Paul was going to accept your offer. Yes, he was. Then why? Raphael moved closer to her. Because I changed my mind, Helen. Because I realized that some things can't be bought, not even with all the money in the world. You killed my father. I did not light the fire that killed Paul. Raphael spoke slowly, each word weighing like a stone. But I didn't stop it either. Helen felt as if the entire world were collapsing around her. Why? He was going to do what you wanted. Because I realized that even if Christina went with me, she would never truly love me, and that drove me mad with rage. Helen raised her hand to slap Raphael's face, but he caught her wrist firmly. "Now you know the truth," he said. "The question is, what are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to the police. I'm going to tell them everything." "Based on what? A diary that could have been forged? The words of a man you just met?" Raphael released her wrist. "Besides, Helen, do you really want to destroy the only chance you have to understand who you are?" "What are you talking about?" Raphael walked to one of the covered boxes and pulled off the sheet, revealing a painting. It was another portrait of a young woman, but this time Helen was absolutely certain it was her. "This painting was done in 1995, Helen, 2 years before you were born." Helen approached the painting, mesmerized. It was impossible, but there she was, 20 years old, wearing a dress she had never seen, in a pose she had never made. "How?" "Because some souls repeat themselves," Raphael whispered behind her. "Because fate has its own ways of correcting past mistakes. Because you, Helen, are not just Christina's daughter. You are the reincarnation of the love I lost a long time ago." Helen turned to face him, and what she saw in Raphael's face frightened her more than any truth she had discovered. It wasn't just obsession or madness. It was complete adoration, absolute devotion, a sick and overwhelming love that seemed capable of destroying worlds. "You're insane," she whispered. "Perhaps," he agreed, "but you're here. Despite everything you know now, you didn't run away. You didn't scream for help. You didn't report me." Helen realized with horror that he was right. Something inside her, something she didn't understand, was keeping her there, fascinated by the man who had destroyed her family. "Why?" she asked herself as much as him. "Because," Raphael stepped closer and touched her face with a tenderness that contrasted with all the violence of his actions. "Because deep down, you know you belong. To me, you always have." And when he kissed her, Helen didn't push him away. She didn't scream, she didn't fight, because, as terrible as it was to admit, there was something about that kiss that felt like coming home. Helen left the storage unit in a state of shock. Raphael's kiss still burned on her lips like a physical brand, and she had spent the entire journey back touching her mouth, trying to understand why she hadn't resisted. Why, instead of pushing him away, she had closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel something that should have been repugnant. When she got home, Christina was waiting for her in the living room, nervous and pale. "You went to see him, didn't you?" It wasn't a question. Helen collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. "Mom, I need to know something. Could Raphael be my father?" Christina closed her eyes as if the question caused physical pain. "Helen? Mom, please. After everything I found out today, I need this answer. I really don't know. When I found out I was pregnant, I'd only been with Paul for 15 days, but it had also only been 15 days since I'd broken up. With Raphael. You never got a test? Paul didn't want to, and I was afraid of the result." Helen buried her face in her hands. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that Raphael really was your father, and that it would mean he had rights over you. Afraid that Paul would leave me. Afraid that our whole happy life would fall apart." Our happy life fell apart anyway. Christina sat down next to her daughter. "Helen, what did Raphael show you today?" Helen told her about the diary, about the painting made before she was born, about all the disturbing revelations. When she finished, Christina was crying. "My God, he kept all of that for all these years." "Mom, there's one more thing." Helen took a deep breath. "I think I'm feeling something for him." Christina stared at her in horror. "What?" "I can't explain it. It's like there's something familiar about him, something I recognize but shouldn't. It's like—" She struggled to find the right words. "Like my soul knew him before my brain understood who he is." "Helen, that's not love. It's manipulation. Raphael was always very good at making people feel special, unique, as if they were destined to be with him. And what if it's not? What if there really is something more?" Christina held her daughter's hands. "Even if there were, do you think you could live with a man who may have killed your father? Could you look at him every day knowing he destroyed our family?" Helen had no answer for that. She knew her mother was right, but there was something stronger than logic pulling her toward Raphael. The next morning, she arrived at the foundation determined to talk to Michael, to tell him everything and ask for his help to get out of this situation. But when she entered the building, she found an elegant woman talking to Raphael in the main hall. The woman was about 40, with impeccable blonde hair, expensive clothes, and a posture that radiated power. When she saw Helen, her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Helen," Raphael approached, "this is Vivian Dupont, curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art. Vivian, this is Helen, the intern I told you about." Vivian extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "A pleasure to meet you, Helen. Raphael has told me very interesting things about you." There was something in Vivian's tone that made Helen uncomfortable. It was as if she knew something Helen didn't. "The pleasure is mine," Helen replied politely. "Helen, Vivian will be coordinating a new project here at the foundation," Raphael explained. "She'll be working with us for the next few months." After Raphael stepped away to take a call, Vivian approached Helen. "Can I speak with you in private?" Helen nodded, and they walked to the garden out back. "Helen, how long have you known Raphael?" "A few weeks. Why?" Vivian studied her carefully before answering. "Because I've known him for 15 years. And because you're not the first young woman he's hired to work here." Helen's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "In the last 15 years, Raphael has hired at least 6 young women for internships or temporary jobs. They all had a few things in common. They were beautiful, between 18 and 25, came from humble families and—" Vivian paused dramatically. "They all resembled a specific woman." "What woman?" "A woman Raphael was obsessively in love with a long time ago. A woman who rejected him and disappeared from his life." Helen felt as if the ground were shifting. What happened to those young women? 2 had nervous breakdowns. 1 attempted suicide, another simply disappeared. To this day, no one knows where she is. The other 2 managed to escape before it was too late. Escape from what? Vivian glanced toward the building, checking that Raphael wasn't nearby. "Raphael has a serious problem, Helen. He falls in love with the idea of people, not the real people. He creates elaborate fantasies, constructs impossible romantic stories, and when people can't live up to those fantasies," she shook her head, "he destroys them." Helen remembered Raphael's words about souls that repeat, about destiny. "Vivian, why are you telling me this?" "Because unlike the others, you have something that can protect you. You have someone who cares about you." "Michael?" "Michael. He came to talk to me yesterday, worried about you. He told me Raphael was behaving strangely, asking questions that were too personal. That's how I knew there was a new girl." Helen felt a wave of affection for Michael. Even without fully understanding the situation, he was trying to protect her. "Vivian, there's something I need to ask you. Is it possible that Raphael is my father?" Vivian's expression changed. Completely. "What did you say?" Helen quickly told her about her mother's story, about the revelations of the past few days. When she finished, Vivian was pale. "Helen, Raphael can't have children." "How do you know?" "Because I was married to him for 3 years. Helen's world stopped. "You were married to him?" "From 2010 to 2013. It was the most toxic period of my life, but also the most enlightening about who Raphael really is." Vivian sat on a garden bench. "Raphael had mumps when he was a teenager. The illness caused a complication that left him sterile. He can never have biological children." Helen sat down heavily beside her. "So he's lying about being my father. Not just lying. He's building an elaborate fantasy to justify his obsession with you." Vivian touched Helen's arm. "My dear, you need to get out of here, today." "I can't. I need more answers." "What answers?" "You already know he's dangerous, that he may have killed the man you considered your father, that he's lying about his paternity." "What more do you need to know?" Helen couldn't explain, not even to herself, why she couldn't just leave and never come back. There was something incomplete, something she needed to understand before she could move on. "A few more days," she said. "Just a few more days." Vivian sighed. "If you insist on staying, at least don't be alone with him. Always keep Michael nearby. And Helen, She looked directly into her eyes. If at any point you feel like you're losing control, that you're falling for him despite everything, run. Because that's the most dangerous moment of all. That afternoon, Helen looked for Michael in the restoration studio. He was working on cleaning an 18th century canvas with the total concentration she always admired in him. "Michael, I need to thank you." He looked up. "Thank me for what?" "For talking to Vivian, for trying to protect me." Michael put his brushes aside. "Helen, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know you're in danger, and I'm not going to stand by and watch you get hurt." Helen moved closer to him. "Michael, why do you care so much about me?" "Because you're special. Because from the first day I saw you, I knew there was something different about you. Something pure, true." He touched her face. "And because I love you, Helen. For real, not a fantasy, not an obsession. I love you for who you are, not for who I want you to be." Helen felt tears in her eyes. Michael represented everything that was good and normal in life. Security, honesty, a simple and true love. Why then couldn't she return his feelings with the same intensity? "Michael, I wish I could love you the way you deserve." "You can, Helen. You just need to give yourself a chance. You need to stop looking for complications where there could be simple happiness." At that moment, Raphael appeared at the studio door. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, but he didn't sound sorry. "Helen, can we talk?" Michael stood between Helen and Raphael. "She doesn't want to talk to you." "Let Helen speak for herself," Raphael replied calmly. Helen looked at the two men, feeling torn between two completely different worlds. Michael, representing light, simplicity, uncomplicated love. Raphael, representing mystery, dangerous passion, the answers she so desperately needed. "It's okay, Michael," she said finally. Michael stared at her with disappointment. "Helen, please, just a few minutes." After Michael left, clearly annoyed, Raphael closed the studio door. "Vivian told you some things today, it wasn't a question. She told me you can't have children." Raphael smiled. "Vivian was always very well informed." "So it's true?" "It's true that I can't have biological children, yes." Helen felt a mix of relief and disappointment. "Why did you lie to me?" "I didn't lie, Helen. I said you were the second chance I never thought I'd have. I didn't say you were my daughter." "You implied it." "I let you draw your own conclusions." Raphael moved closer to her. "Sometimes the connections between people go beyond biology, Helen. Sometimes they're spiritual, emotional, karmic." "That's crazy." "Raphael." "Is it? Then explain why you're still here. Why, after everything you've discovered, you can't just walk out of my life." Helen had no answer for that. She knew she should hate Raphael, should be disgusted by him, should run into Michael's safe arms. But there was something magnetic about him that prevented her from pulling away completely. "Because you fascinate me," she finally admitted. "And that scares me." "You don't have to be afraid of me, Helen." "Yes, I do. Vivian told me about the other girls." "The other girls weren't you." "And what makes me so different?" Raphael touched her face with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity of the situation. "You have courage. You don't run when things get complicated. You want the truth, even if it hurts. And that makes me special. That makes you perfect for me." When Raphael kissed her this time, Helen responded, not because she was in love, not because she was sure of her feelings, but because there was something in that kiss that felt like an answer to questions she didn't even know she was asking. When they broke apart, she saw Michael standing in the doorway, a look of pure disgust on his face. "Helen," he said in a controlled voice, "I thought you were different. I thought you were too smart to fall into such an obvious trap." "Michael, it's not what you think." "Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like a woman choosing the wrong man for the wrong reasons." Michael left the studio, and Helen tried to go after him, but Raphael held her arm. "Let him go, Helen. He doesn't understand." "He understands perfectly. That's why he's scared." Raphael forced her to face him. "The question is, are you going to choose safety, or are you going to choose the truth?" And what if the truth destroys me? Raphael smiled, and there was something predatory in that smile. Then you will be destroyed by something worthwhile. That night, Helen received a text from Michael. Helen, I'll wait for you until 5 p.m. tomorrow at Washington Square Park. If you show up, we'll leave New York together. We'll start a new life, far from all this. If you don't show up, I'll understand you've made your choice. I love you. Helen stared at the message all night, knowing she was about to make the most important decision of her life. Michael represented the possibility of a normal, happy, uncomplicated life. Raphael represented a dark path, full of mysteries and dangers, but also full of an intensity she had never experienced before. The next morning she woke up with a certainty that frightened her. She already knew what her choice would be. Helen spent the entire morning walking the streets of New York, trying to organize her thoughts. Michael's message burned in her phone like an ultimatum, while Raphael's words echoed in her mind. Are you going to choose safety, or are you going to choose the truth? At 4 p.m, she was standing at the entrance to Washington Square Park, watching Michael sit on a bench, checking his watch every few seconds. He wore a simple t-shirt and jeans, a backpack at his feet, and the expression on his face was that of someone preparing for disappointment, but still holding on to a thread of hope. Helen walked toward him, and when Michael saw her, his face lit up. You came, he said, standing up. Yes, I did. Michael hugged her, and Helen allowed herself to feel the safety of his arms, the simplicity of an uncomplicated love. I have everything planned, Michael said quickly. We can go to the Hamptons. My sister has an inn there. You can finish college out there. I can find work easily. It would be a simple life, but it would be ours. Helen looked into his eyes and saw so much sincerity, so much genuine love, that she almost changed her mind about what she had come to do. Michael, she said softly, I need to tell you something. His expression changed immediately. You're not coming with me. I can't. Because of him. Because of me. Helen took Michael's hands. There's something inside of me that needs answers, that can't just run away. And if I went with you now, I would spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? Michael let go of her hands. Helen, you're making a terrible mistake. Maybe. But it's a mistake I need to make. And then what? When you find out he's everything I said he was, when you realize you chose destruction over love, it will be too late. Helen felt tears in her eyes. Michael, you're the best man I've ever known. You deserve someone who can love you without reservations, without shadows from the past. I want you, Helen, with all your shadows. And I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. Michael kissed her one last time, a sweet and melancholy kiss that tasted of farewell. If you change your mind, he whispered against her lips, if you ever need me, you'll know where to find me. Helen watched him leave with a broken heart, but also with a strange sense of relief. She had made her choice, and as dangerous as it was, it felt right. When she arrived at the foundation, Raphael was waiting for her in his office. He didn't ask where she had been, didn't comment on Michael. He just looked at her and knew. So, he said, you chose the truth. Yes, I did. Even knowing the risks? Especially because of the risks. Raphael smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes. Helen, there's something I haven't told you yet, about the last conversation I had with Paul before his death. Helen sat down, bracing herself for another revelation. Paul came to me because he was desperate, not just because of the cancellations and threats, but because he had discovered something about your mother's past that was haunting him. What did he discover? Raphael went to a cabinet and pulled out a yellow file. Documents proving that Christina was pregnant when she got involved with Paul. Helen frowned. What do you mean? Your mother was already pregnant when she met Paul at the carpentry shop, about 6 weeks along. Helen's world spun. It means Paul always knew he wasn't your biological father, and it means your mother has been lying to you all these years. Helen took the documents with trembling hands. They were old medical records, confirming Christina's pregnancy on a date that made it impossible for Paul to be the father. Why did he never say anything? Because he loved your mother and wanted to protect her, but also because he was afraid of who the real father was. Who? Raphael moved closer to her. Helen, I may not be able to have children now, but 20 years ago, before the mumps that left me sterile, I could. Helen stopped breathing. What? The documents Vivian saw were from a later time. I got mumps in 2005 when I was 25. You were born in 1998. Helen looked at the medical records again, doing the math. The dates matched perfectly. You're my father? The DNA tests I had done confirm it, yes. Helen stood up abruptly. What tests? When? You left a glass of water here on your first day of work. It was easy to get a sample. The reality hit Helen like a punch to the gut. You did a DNA test without telling me? I needed to be sure before I told you the truth. And when were you going to tell me? After manipulating me? After making me fall in love with you? Raphael looked at her seriously. Helen, you need to understand something. When I found out you were my daughter, everything changed. All the feelings I thought I was developing, all the connections I felt, took on a completely different meaning. What meaning? The meaning that you are the only family I have, the only person in the world who carries my blood, my history, my essence. Helen backed away from him, trying to process it all. Raphael, you kissed me twice, knowing I'm your daughter. I know, and I hate myself for it. If you knew, why did you do it? Raphael ran his hands through his hair, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. Because for 20 years, I idealized you. For 20 years, I imagined what it would be like to meet you, to raise you, to be your father. And when I finally found you, you were no longer a child. You were a beautiful, intelligent, brave woman. For a few days, I allowed myself to forget the truth and live the fantasy that you were just a special woman I was falling in love with. That's sick, Raphael. I know it is. But Helen, you need to understand that I never had a real family. I never knew what it was to love someone unconditionally. When I found out you existed, it was as if a decades-long void was finally filled. Helen sat down heavily in an armchair. Why did you kill Paul? If you knew I was your daughter, why did you destroy the only father figure I ever knew? Raphael knelt before her. Because I was young, stupid, and blinded by jealousy. Paul had everything I wanted. Christina's love, the chance to raise you, to be a family. I couldn't stand that another man was living the life I thought should be mine. So you killed him. I set up a situation that resulted in his death, yes. But Helen, I have spent the last 20 years regretting it. Regretting taking away your chance to grow up with the man who loved you as a true daughter. Helen looked at the man kneeling before her, feeling a mixture of anger, disgust, and a strange compassion. What do you want from me now, Raphael? I want, he said, gently touching her hand, the chance to be your father. Not in the way I fantasized for years, but in the right way. I want to truly know you, to understand who you've become, to help you build the future you deserve. And what if I can't forgive you? What if every time I look at you, all I can think about is Paul burning alive? Raphael closed his eyes as if the words were physical blows. Then I will accept that, but I will keep trying to redeem myself until the last day of my life. Helen stood up and went to the window looking down at the busy street below. Normal people with normal lives, normal problems. How she wished she could trade places with any one of them. Helen, Raphael said from behind her, there's one more thing you need to know. What? About why your mother really ran from me. Helen turned around. She didn't run because she was in love with Paul. She ran because she found out I was involved in dangerous business, art trafficking mainly, stolen works sold on the international black market. Are you still involved in that? No, I stopped completely after Paul's death. It was my way of trying to redeem myself. Helen let out a bitter laugh. So you were a criminal too? I was. Now I'm just a repentant man trying to make up for the mistakes of the past. And how can I be sure you're telling the truth? How do I know this isn't just another manipulation? Raphael went to the safe behind his desk and took out a sealed envelope. This envelope contains all the documents about my past dealings, names, dates, proof. If you want to report me to the police, you have everything you need right here. Helen looked at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. Why are you giving me this? Because I want you to have the power to choose my fate. If you decide I deserve to be punished for my crimes, I will accept that punishment. And if I decide not to report you, then maybe with time you can learn to forgive me. Helen took the envelope, feeling the weight of the decisions it represented. I need time to think. As much time as you need. And I need space, away from you. Raphael nodded. I'll be traveling for a few weeks, abroad. When I get back, if you want to see me, I'll be here. If you don't, I will accept your decision and never bother you again. That night, Helen returned home with her head exploding. She told Christina everything, who broke down crying when she learned that Raphael was indeed Helen's father. I always knew, Christina sobbed. Deep down, I always knew. But I was so afraid of him, so afraid of what he might do. Mum, why did you never tell me the truth? Because I wanted you to grow up normal, happy, without carrying the weight of having a father like Raphael. Paul was a much better father than Raphael could ever be. But Paul didn't get the chance to be my father for very long, did he? Christina looked at her daughter with eyes full of guilt. Helen, I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest from the beginning. Mum, what do I do now? How do I live knowing all of this? Christina hugged her daughter. You live one day at a time, and you decide what kind of person you want to be, regardless of who your father is. That week, Helen didn't go to work. She stayed home, processing everything, trying to understand her own feelings. Part of her felt anger toward Raphael, disgust for what he had done. But another part, a part she didn't want to admit, felt a strange connection to him, a familiarity that finally made sense. 5 days after their conversation, she received a call from Vivian. Helen, are you okay? Michael came to see me, worried. He said you disappeared. I'm fine, Vivian. I just needed some time to think. About Raphael? About everything. Helen, can I ask you a question? Do you still have romantic feelings for him? Helen thought carefully before answering. No, I think what I felt was an unconscious recognition, a connection my body understood even when my mind didn't. And now that you know the truth, now I need to decide if I want a father like Raphael in my life. Vivian was silent for a moment. Helen, can I give you some advice? Of course. Raphael is a dangerous man, but he's also a man broken by guilt. If you decide to give him a chance as a father, set clear boundaries, and never forget what he's capable of. And if I decide never to see him again, then you will have made the safest decision of your life. After the call, Helen took the envelope Raphael had given her and opened it. Inside were enough documents to imprison Raphael for decades. But there was also something unexpected. Letters. Letters written by Raphael to her over the years. Letters he never sent, documenting his desperate search to find her, his regret over Paul's death, his plans to redeem himself. One letter dated 5 years ago made her cry, My dearest Helen, today you turn 15 and I don't know if you're well, if you're happy, if you have friends. I ruined everything before you were even born, and not a day goes by that I don't regret it. Your real father, Paul, was a much better man than I will ever be. If I could go back in time, I would let you grow up in his arms, I would let you all be happy. But I can't. All I can do now is try to become a man worthy of perhaps one day being able to meet you. Helen closed her eyes, feeling tears roll down her face. For the first time since discovering the truth, she didn't just feel anger toward Raphael. She also felt a strange sadness for all the lost years, for all the moments they never had as father and daughter. At the end of the week, she made her decision. She called the foundation and found out that Raphael had indeed traveled, as promised. She left a message with Marcia. Tell him that when he gets back, I want to talk. But on one condition. No more lies, no more games, no more manipulation. If he wants to try to be my father, it will have to be with complete honesty. 3 weeks later, Raphael returned, and this time when they met, it was different. There was no more sexual tension, no more romantic games. There was only a repentant man and a young woman trying to understand if it was possible to build a family relationship on the ruins of so much suffering. "Helen," Raphael said when he saw her again, "I want you to know that I spent these weeks in therapy, trying to understand my own behaviors, trying to become someone better. And did you succeed?" "I'm trying every day." Helen studied him carefully. There was something different about him. Less arrogance, less predatory intensity, more humility. "Raphael, if we're going to try to have some kind of relationship, it has to be on my terms." "What terms?" "First, you're going to turn yourself in to the police for the crimes you committed." Raphael nodded without hesitation. "I've already scheduled a meeting for next week." "Second, you're going to pay my mother an allowance for the rest of her life, not because she needs it, but because you destroyed her life once." "Done." "Third, you will fund a foundation, in Paul Montgomery's name, to help young people from underprivileged communities study art." "Perfect." "And fourth, if at any moment I feel you're trying to manipulate or control me, I will disappear from your life forever." Raphael extended his hand to her. "I accept all conditions." Helen shook his hand, and for the first time she felt that it might be possible to build something healthy out of so much chaos. "Now," she said, "tell me about when you were young. I want to meet my father, not the dangerous man you became." And there, that afternoon in New York, began the strange and complex journey of a father and daughter trying to get to know each other after 20 years of separation and secrets. 6 months had passed since Helen and Raphael began to build a father-daughter relationship. It wasn't easy. There were moments of anger, of frustration, joint therapy sessions that ended in tears, but there were also discoveries. Raphael played the piano, just like Helen. They both had a habit of reading late into the night. They both felt more comfortable in dimly lit places. Raphael kept all the promises he had made. He turned himself in to the police and was sentenced to 5 years in prison for art trafficking. But due to his cooperation and the fact that he had returned all the works he still possessed, he would serve his sentence in a work release program. The Paul Montgomery Foundation was established and was already helping 15 young people study art at universities in New York. Helen continued her studies. Now on a full scholarship, Raphael had arranged for her at a private university. Vivian became a close friend and mentor, and Christina, after much therapy, finally managed to make peace with the past. But there was something that still bothered Helen. She missed Michael. During these months she had received a few messages from him. Nothing intrusive, just asking if she was okay, if she needed anything. Helen always replied that yes, she was fine, but never prolonged the conversations. Part of her was afraid to admit that she had made a mistake by letting him go. One Thursday afternoon, Helen was in the university library when she saw a familiar figure among the shelves. It was Michael, thinner than before, with a stubble, but still with those kind eyes she remembered. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi." Helen closed the book she was reading. "What are you doing here?" "Master's program. I transferred back to New York last month." "Why?" Michael sat in the chair next to her. "Because I found out that running from your problems doesn't solve them." Helen looked at him, noticing the small changes that time had brought. There was a new maturity in his face, a solidity that wasn't there before. "Michael, Helen, let me speak first." He took a deep breath. "I spent these months thinking about everything that happened, the way I behaved, the things I said. You didn't say anything wrong. You were trying to protect me. I was trying to control you." Michael shook his head. "I wanted you to make the choices I thought were right, without understanding that you needed to make your own choices, even if they were wrong." Helen felt a wave of affection for him. "Michael, you weren't wrong about Raphael being dangerous." "No, but I was wrong to think I could force you to choose me. What kind of love is it that only works if the other person has no other options?" They were silent for a moment, the weight of the months apart hanging between them. "How are you?" Michael asked. "Good. Confused sometimes, but good. And you?" Better. I went to therapy, changed some things in my life, learned to respect myself more. What do you mean? Michael smiled, and it was the same warm smile she remembered. I learned that I deserve someone who chooses me without reservations, without doubts, and I also learned that this doesn't mean the person can't have problems or conflicts. It means that in the end she has to want to be with me. Helen's heart sped up. Michael. Helen, I didn't come here to pressure you. I came because I want you to know that I still love you. I love the woman you are now after everything you've been through. I love your courage, your strength, your ability to face the truth, even when it hurts. And what if I tell you I'm still confused, that I'm still trying to figure out who I am? Then I'll wait, not passively, not like a lost dog waiting for you to come back, but I'll live my life, build my future, and if one day you decide you want to be a part of it, I'll be here. Helen looked at Michael and saw something she hadn't seen before, a complete man who knew his worth, who didn't need her to feel whole, but who would choose to be with her if she wanted him. Can I ask you a question? She said. Of course. Why did you come back to New York? The truth. Michael smiled. Because I realized I wasn't running from you. I was running from myself. And because I found out I'd rather fight for what I want than live wondering what if. That night, Helen arrived home with her head spinning. She found Christina in the kitchen preparing dinner. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetie. How did you know you loved Paul? How did you know it wasn't just an escape from Raphael? Christina stopped chopping vegetables and looked at Helen. Why the question? Helen told her about her meeting with Michael, about the confusing feelings she was experiencing. Oh, my daughter, Christina smiled. I knew I loved Paul, because with him I could just be myself. I didn't have to pretend to be more interesting, more beautiful, more sophisticated. With Paul I could wake up a mess, say silly things, cry when I was sad, and he loved me just the same. And with Raphael? With Raphael, I always felt like I was being tested, that I had to prove I deserved his love. It was exhausting. Helen thought about the conversations she'd had with Michael during the months they worked together, the ease with which they spoke, the naturalness of the silences, the way he made her laugh without effort. Mom, I think I made a mistake. What mistake? I let the right man go while I was chasing. Answers that weren't going to make me any happier. Christina hugged her daughter. Then go after him. What if it's too late? What if it's not? The next morning, Helen looked for Michael at the university. She found him in the restoration lab, working on an old canvas with the same concentration she had always admired in him. Can I come in? Michael looked up and smiled. Always. Helen entered and closed the door behind her. Michael, I thought a lot about our conversation yesterday. And I want to ask you a question. Would you be willing to give me a second chance? Michael put his brush aside. Helen, that depends. Are you choosing me because you're finally sure of what you want, or because it's the safest option? Helen moved closer to him. I'm choosing you, because I've discovered that all the intensity and drama in the world isn't worth a moment of peace by your side. I'm choosing you because, when I'm with you, I don't have to be anyone but who I am. And Raphael? As a father? Raphael will always be my father, and I will always have a complicated relationship with him, but that doesn't define who I am or who I can love. Michael studied her face for a long moment. Helen, if we're going to try again, it has to be different this time. Different how? This time I want you to choose me every day, not because you don't have other options, but because you want to be with me. I want you to tell me when you're confused, when you're scared, when you're happy. I want to be your partner, not your savior. Helen held his face in her hands. And I want you to keep being exactly who you are. Kind, honest, hardworking. I want to build a simple, happy life with you. When Michael kissed her, Helen felt something she had never experienced before. The feeling of being exactly where she belonged. There was no drama, no sick intensity, no mysteries, just love, simple and true. 3 months later, Raphael was released from prison into the work release program. Helen went to pick him up, and on the way home he asked, "And Michael? How are things with him?" Helen smiled. "Good. Very good. Do you love him? Yes, I do. Raphael nodded. And does he make you happy? He does. Then I approve, Helen laughed, as if I needed your approval. True. But for the record, Michael is a good man, much better than I ever was. That afternoon, Helen took Raphael to see the apartment Michael had rented near the university. The two men greeted each other politely, and Helen realized that Michael no longer felt jealousy or resentment. Raphael, for his part, seemed genuinely happy to see her happy. Raphael, Michael said during dinner, Helen told me about the foundation. It's an incredible project. It's the most important thing I've ever done in my life, Raphael replied. After her, of course. Helen smiled, watching the two most important men in her life talking civilly. Raphael, she said, there's something I want to ask you. Anything. I want you to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Raphael almost dropped his glass of water. You're getting married, Michael laughed. I haven't officially asked yet, but I already know what the answer will be, Helen completed, looking at Michael with all the love in the world in her eyes. Raphael had tears in his eyes. It would be an honor, my daughter. And in that moment, Helen realized she had finally found her place in the world. It wasn't a perfect place. It wasn't a place without scars. But it was a place where she was loved for who she really was, where she could be happy without drama, where she could build a future based on true love and not obsession. Looking at Michael, who held her hand tenderly, and at Raphael, who for the first time seemed truly at peace with himself, Helen knew she had made the right choices. It had taken time, it had been painful, but in the end, the truth, the me, had prevailed. And the truth was simple. Real love wasn't made of intensity and drama. It was made of trust, respect, companionship, and the daily choice to be beside someone who completed you without diminishing you. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Michael knelt in the Foundation's garden in the same place where Helen had discovered so many truths about her past and asked the question she had been waiting for months. Helen Montgomery, will you marry me? And when she said yes, with tears of happiness in her eyes, she knew she had finally reached the end of the most difficult journey of her life, and that the rest of this journey would be built alongside the man who loved her exactly as she was, imperfect, but complete. The wedding was set for December, in a small chapel in Greenwich Village. Helen wanted something simple, intimate, with only the people who truly mattered. Christina cried when she saw the invitation, finally believing that her daughter had found the happiness she herself had sought for so long. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Helen divided her time between preparations and her regular visits to Raphael, who was now working part-time at the Paul Montgomery Foundation as part of his work release program. Seeing Raphael work with the young scholarship students was one of the most transformative experiences of Helen's life. "You've changed," she said one afternoon, watching him explain restoration techniques to a 17-year-old boy who reminded her a lot of a young Michael. "For the better, I hope." "Definitely for the better." Raphael smiled, and Helen realized it was a genuine smile, without the layers of manipulation that used to accompany his expressions. "Helen, can I make a confession?" "Of course." "When I met you, I thought you were going to fill a void inside me. I thought having you in my life would make me feel complete. And now I understand that no one can fill another person's void. Everyone has to learn to feel complete on their own." Raphael looked at the young people working in the studio. "These kids have taught me more about fatherhood than all the books I read for 20 years. "How so?" "Being a father isn't about possession. It's about teaching, supporting, and then letting go. It's celebrating when your children no longer need you, instead of trying to make them always need you." Helen hugged Raphael, feeling how much they had both grown in these months. "Raphael, I want you to know that I've forgiven you. Completely." "Helen, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I need to forgive. Because I don't want to start my married life carrying anger." Raphael hugged her back, and Helen felt they had finally reached a place of true peace. A week before the wedding, Helen received a surprise. Michael showed up at her apartment with a mysterious look on his face. I have something to show you, he said. They walked to the building's garage where Michael had parked a car Helen didn't recognize. Michael, what car is this? It's ours. I bought it for our honeymoon. Helen laughed. Our honeymoon is going to be on the Jersey Shore, at your parents' house. Why do we need a car? Because, Michael opened the trunk, our honeymoon plans have changed. Inside the trunk were 2 large backpacks and a map of the United States marked with several red dots. Michael, what is this? Our 3-month road trip across America. I want to show you places you've never seen, get to know our own history, our own culture. Helen looked at the map, seeing marks on small towns in the Midwest, isolated beaches on the West Coast, mountains, all carefully planned. Michael, you're crazy. I can't leave for 3 months. I have college, work. I already talked to your professors. You can do an independent project documenting American folk art during the trip. And as for work, Michael smiled. Vivian said it would be the best training experience you could have. Helen threw herself into his arms. How did you manage to organize all this without me knowing? With your father's help. Raphael? Raphael, he funded the whole trip and said it was his wedding present to us. Helen felt tears in her eyes. He did that. He said he wanted our first adventure as a couple to be unforgettable. That night, Helen called Raphael. Raphael, Michael told me about the trip. So, did you like it? I loved it. But why did you do it? Because, Raphael paused, because I want you to be happy in a way I never could be. I want you to have adventures, see the world, build happy memories. And you, won't you be lonely? Raphael laughed. Helen, I have 15 young people here at the foundation who drive me crazy every day. Besides, 3 months will fly by. Raphael, yes? Thank you. For everything. For being a better father than you thought you could be. Thank you for giving me the chance to try. The wedding day dawned sunny with that pleasant December warmth in New York. Helen woke up at Christina's house, in her mother's arms, like when she was little. Nervous? Christina asked. No. Excited. To get married or for the honeymoon? Helen laughed. For both. The dress was simple, white, lace bought from a shop in the city center. Helen didn't want anything extravagant. She wanted something that represented who she really was. When they arrived at the chapel, Helen saw Michael waiting at the altar, handsome in a navy blue suit that highlighted his clear eyes. Beside him was Vivian, who had agreed to be the maid of honor, and on the other side, Christina, radiant in a light pink dress. At the back of the chapel, Raphael was waiting to walk her down the aisle. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. You look beautiful, my daughter. Thank you, Dad. It was the first time Helen had called him Dad, and Raphael needed a moment to compose himself. The walk down the aisle was emotional. Helen looked at Michael, who was smiling as if he were the happiest man in the world, and felt that she was finally in the right place with the right people. When Raphael gave her to Michael, he whispered in his son-in-law's ear, "Take good care of her." "With my life," Michael replied. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. The officiant, a friend of Michael's family, spoke about true love, about companionship, about the importance of building a life based on mutual respect. When it was time for the vows, Michael took Helen's hands and said, "Helen, when I met you, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. But when I truly got to know you, I discovered you were so much more than that. You were brave, intelligent, strong. You went through situations that would destroy most people, but you came out of them even more determined to be happy. I promise to love you every day, to support you in all your dreams, and to be your partner in all the adventures life brings." Helen, with tears in her eyes, replied, "Michael, you taught me that true love isn't dramatic or complicated. It's simple, honest, reliable. You taught me that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am, without having to pretend to be someone else. I promise to choose you every day, to share all my fears and joys with you, and to build with you the happiest life we can imagine." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the entire chapel burst into applause. Helen kissed Michael, feeling that she had finally reached her destination. The reception was at the foundation itself, in the garden where Helen had discovered so many truths about herself. Raphael had transformed the space into a small, intimate celebration, with lights strung in the trees, a long table with simple and delicious food and live music. During the reception, Raphael gave a speech that moved everyone present. 2 years ago, I was a lost man, consumed by regrets and obsessions from the past. Helen gave me something I didn't know I needed, not just a daughter to love, but the chance to become a better person. She taught me that it's never too late to change, never too late to redeem oneself. Raphael looked at Helen and Michael. Michael, thank you for loving my daughter the way she deserves. Helen, thank you for giving me a second chance to be your father. The party ended late at night, with Helen and Michael dancing alone in the garden as the last guests said their goodbyes. Ready for our adventure? Michael asked. More than ready, for this one and for all the others to come. The next morning they left for their 3-month honeymoon. The first stop was in upstate New York, in the town where Christina was born. Helen wanted to know her roots to understand where her strength came from. During the trip, they visited small towns, met local artists, and documented traditions that were being lost. Helen wrote in a journal every day, recording not only what they saw but what they felt. "It's strange," she said one night, while they were at a simple inn in the Catskills. "I spent so much time looking for answers about my past that I almost forgot to build my future. And now? Now I know that the past taught me important things, but it doesn't define me. I define myself by the choices I make every day." Michael kissed her under a starry sky, like Helen had never seen in the big city. "And what choices do you want to make?" "I want to finish college, maybe get a master's. I want to work at Raphael's foundation, help other young people like me. I want to travel with you, see the world. And someday, when we're ready, I want to have children and be for them the kind of mother my mom always tried to be. And I want to be by your side in all those adventures." When they returned from their honeymoon, they found New York transformed by the March rains. Everything seemed greener, more alive, more full of possibilities. Raphael was waiting for them at the airport, eager to hear about their trip. During the welcome home dinner at Christina's house, Helen told them about all the places they had visited, all the people they had met. "And what impressed you the most on the trip?" Raphael asked. Helen thought for a moment. The discovery that America is much bigger and more beautiful than I imagined, and that it doesn't matter where you are, what matters is who you're with. 6 months after the wedding, Helen graduated from college with honors. Her project on American folk art, based on her honeymoon, was considered one of the best in her class. On graduation day, her whole family was there. Christina beaming with pride, Raphael, who had brought some young people from the foundation to watch, Vivian, who had become a second mother, and Michael, who gave her a standing ovation when her name was called. "Dr. Helen," Raphael joked after the ceremony. "I'm not a doctor yet, Dad. To me, you always will be." That night at home, Helen and Michael talked about the future. "What do you want to do now?" he asked. "I want to work at the foundation for a few years, gain experience, then maybe open our own NGO focused on arts education for underprivileged communities." "Our NGO?" Helen smiled. "If you want to be my partner." "I want to be your partner in everything, Helen. Forever." 2 years later, Helen was 7 months pregnant when she received an unexpected call. It was the director of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, inviting her to be the curator of a major exhibition on American folk art. "But I'm pregnant," she said. "That's precisely why. We want someone who understands that art is about life, about continuity, about passing traditions on." Helen accepted the invitation, and the exhibition was an absolute success. Raphael went to the opening proud as ever, watching his daughter shine in the art world in an honest and genuine way. "You did it," he said to her that night. "Did what?" "Became everything I always wanted to be, but in a clean, true way." In December, exactly 3 years, after they married, Helen and Michael became parents to a baby girl. They named her Sophia, which means wisdom. When Raphael held his granddaughter for the first time, he cried as Helen had never seen him cry before. "She's perfect," he whispered. Just like her grandpa, Helen joked. No, Helen, she's perfect because she's going to grow up in a family full of true love. Something I never had, something I almost destroyed for you, but that you two managed to build. In that moment, looking at her daughter in her grandfather's arms, with Michael by her side and Christina, taking emotional photos, Helen realized she had finally built the family she had always dreamed of. It wasn't a traditional family. It was a family built on forgiveness, growth, second chances, and unconditional love. 5 years later, at Sophia's birthday party, Helen looked at everyone present. Raphael, now completely free and working full-time at the foundation, Christina, finally at peace with her past, Vivian, who had become an honorary aunt, the young people from the foundation, who had become part of their extended family, and Michael, who was watching her with the same love as on the first day. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked, approaching her. "I'm thinking that life has a strange way of taking us exactly where we need to be. Even when the path is winding? Especially when the path is winding." Sophia ran to them, covered in cake and happy, and Helen picked her up. "Mummy, can I make another birthday wish?" "It's not your birthday, my love." "But can I make one anyway?" Helen laughed. "Yes, you can. I want you, Daddy, Grandma Chris and Grandpa Raph to always be happy." Helen looked at Michael, both moved by their 5-year-old daughter's wisdom. "That's a very easy wish to grant, Sophia," Helen said, "because we already are." And it was true, after so much chaos, so much drama, so much pain, Helen had finally found her happiness. It wasn't a perfect happiness. There were still difficult days, still scars that sometimes ached. But it was a real happiness, built on solid foundations of true love, mutual respect, and the certainty that some people are capable of changing, of growing, of becoming better. That night, after everyone had gone home and Sophia was asleep, Helen and Michael sat on the porch of their house, looking at the stars over New York. "Do you regret anything?" Michael asked. Helen thought carefully before answering. "I don't regret anything, not even the painful parts, because they brought me here. They brought me to you." "And what about Raphael? How do you feel about him now?" "I feel gratitude, not for what he did in the past, but for the way he chose to change. He could have remained the man he was, but he chose to become the father I needed." Michael held her hand. "And us? How do you feel about us?" Helen smiled, looking at the wedding ring she had worn for 5 years. "I feel like I've found my home. Not a place, but a person. You are my home, Michael." They sat there in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, but united by the certainty that they had built something beautiful and lasting. And so, on a starry night in New York, with her daughter sleeping in the next room and her family finally complete and at peace, Helen Montgomery Sands knew that her story had reached the happiest ending she could have imagined. Not because there were no more challenges ahead, but because she now knew she was capable of facing anything, as long as she had the right people by her side. Love had won. True, honest, simple love, the kind of love that builds instead of destroys, that heals instead of hurts, that frees instead of imprisons. And Helen never again doubted that she had made the right choices.